Hello. Welcome to another modding stream. How are you doing today? I'm pretty tired, but I still want to record more. So that we can continue this series, and it will just feel better once it's closer to being done. Hi Francis. And I think we are getting to pretty interesting topics in the near future, and maybe already. So today we start with adding dialogues, and then maybe we continue to custom NPCs, and then we start doing UI stuff. So it's getting to pretty advanced territory, I think, and we start having more interaction, and we can do more advanced features. So I will continue with I will start with the Adding Dialogue 3 episode 8 very soon. How was your modding going, Francis? Did you continue, or are you still waiting for me to publish more episodes? I actually like the damage item thing. I was thinking a bit about how you could make the damage item into or how you could include that with the completed Artisan workshop thing. If every workshop had its own artisan and custom type of item, how you could you have some sort of damage boosting item for some workshop, but I'm not sure. That is pretty fun item. Also, you would have problems with keys, like how many interaction keys you need. Good. Yeah. I hope you have success with your own modding. It would be really cool if you could make every type of workshop more interesting, but of course we have to start with something smaller, so we start with the breweries. But it would be... I added a key to switch potions with. Yeah, that would be... that seems like a very good idea. So in episode 11, we get to loading UI sprites. So I will show how I will do the thing that will kind of show what, or I will put in the top left corner the icon for the Artisan beer. So you could do something similar for the UI that shows your current active potion. But we will have to do some things first. Or episodes 10 and 11 will be about the UI for the mission view. We'll see. The gauntlet UI, it's fine, but it's not the easiest thing to work with. Honestly, it's fine, but I just dislike like XML based UI layout things. So like, and it's somehow more complicated than HTML, but it does the job. So we will use the tool that we have. Toxicity bar. Yeah, I wonder how or I have never looked at the HP bar actually. So there is something called HUD. No? HUD extension widget. Main agent HUD. I will not actually look at it now, but so there is main agent HUD. I have never looked at the HP bar, but it's not this thing, no. Whatever. I have a tool that I can use to find the UI elements a bit easier, but I will wait until the episode 10 to show how that works. And honestly, it's not even that great of a tool, but it's fine for demonstration purposes. Okay, so we should go into adding dialogue.
Look, you and me on the Charles River. I could die right now, Glenn.
Let me pause the music for the actual recording. Although I could keep it for the streams, but I can also remove it while I edit the videos, but I don't think the music is necessary for programming work. Maybe. At least if I keep explaining things, then I think it's more distracting than useful. So, let me check that this looks fine. This does look fine, I think. Okay. So let me just start. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the Artisan Workshop tutorial series. And in this episode, we are going to add dialogue for the NPC that we spawned in the last episode, so that we can actually interact with the NPC and make him do something useful for us. So, to find an example of how to do dialogues, let's go look at the tavern. So in our DN Spy episode, we shortly looked at the tavern employees. So we can actually go back here to see how they do dialogue. So if we just open tavern employees campaign behavior and search for dialogue, you can see that they have add dialogues here. And if we go through the call chain of where this comes from, you can see that in registry events, they listen to on session launched event, and then from there, they just call add dialogues. So basically every behavior can freely add dialogues to the campaign starter. And we will look in more detail what these dialogue lines actually do, and it will be more clear as we go along. But first of all, we need to basically copy what they do here. So we need our own on session launched listener, and we have our behavior where we can add all this stuff freely. So let's just go ahead and start with that part, which we know how to do. So we want to listen to on session launched event. And I don't want the action part because that is not actually required. That is just something that the DN Spy generates. But here we want on session launched is fine name for us. And we can use Visual Studio to generate this method stub. Let's call this starter. And I think I want to copy the same format that they had here. So they had add dialogues as a separate method. So let's just copy that. So let's call add dialogues with our starter. And then again use Visual Studio to generate the method. So then, I was actually thinking that we could add some dialogue lines for the Tavern Keeper before we go into our Artisan Brewer. So as a like practice, we can add dialogue for the Tavern Keeper as well. So to do that, let's just try to look at roughly how this works. So you see that some of the lines call add dialogue line, and some of the lines call add player line. So add dialogue line is what the NPC will say to us, and add player line will add more options to the options to choose from for the player. Let's just say that we want to add button for the player where they can ask the Tavern Keeper if he sells artisan beer for us. So that would look something very much like this ask quest. So this is Tavern Keeper ask quests, where the player can say, do you know of anyone who might have a task for someone like me? So this is pretty much exactly what we want. So let's copy everything up to the actual text. And the one thing you might notice here, that nowhere in this chain of adding this player line is the actual Tavern Keeper NPC or agent or location character mentioned at all. So the dialogues are actually just completely global, but the implications will become more clear as we add more dialogue for our own NPC. But you don't actually need to know anything about your conversation target, the guy you're talking to add dialogues. So let's just add, you need to just make sure that these IDs make sense. So these are, let's look at the parameter names. So the first one is ID. So that's ID for this line of dialogue. And then there's input token and output token, which are kind of like, they're kind of like rooms in a text adventure game, if you've ever programmed text adventures. So they usually you have some sort of like concept of state where you are, which is like room name. So this input token and output token are like the conversation state name and the next conversation state name. So in this case, so we need some sort of ID for this. So this will be Tavern Keeper talk ask artisan beer. That's something unique. Input token is it's the state. It's a dialog state where this line will be added. So Tavern Keeper talk is the correct one. And this Tavern Keeper ask quests is the next state for the conversation. So this will be Tavern Keeper ask, well, or Tavern Keeper artisan beer will be our output token. So the output token is the next state of the conversation. Text will be, do you sell artisan beer? And there are a couple more arguments here. So first of all, there's condition delegate. And then there's consequence delegate. These are required arguments. But at the moment, well, I can explain what these do. So condition delegate is like this is a method that determines if this line of dialogue should be used. And the consequence delegate is another callback, which is like stuff that happens after, or like what happens when you press this dialog button. But in like normal conversation, these are pretty often just null and null if you just want to move to the next state in the conversation. You don't actually need a condition and you don't need a consequence. But obviously you want your conversation to eventually achieve something. So in some cases you will need this. Like here you have on condition, here you have condition, and then you have delegate. And this is something about asking for companions. So this will check what type of companions are available, I guess. So this would already add this dialog option for asking this question to us. So we also need to put in the response. So that will be something that happens in this state. This was our output token. So for the next one, this same thing will be our input token. So this will be some unique ID. And this will be our input token, which is the same as our output token last time. And then this can go back into the main state. And the main state here is the Tavern Keeper talk, where you, which is player's turn to speak about what he wants to ask. So there's sort of like turns between player lines and dialogue lines in the conversation. So this will be something like that. This will be the Tavern Keeper's response. So let's do something like the greedy bastard at the brewery doesn't want to sell his stuff to me. So the Tavern Keeper will tell us that we need to go talk directly to the NPC at the brewery. And after we have done this, we go back to the main state of this conversation, which is the Tavern Keeper talk. And if we look at what all the dialogue lines that have Tavern Keeper talk, their input token, you see that there's actually only 2. That's less than I expected. Or is there more down here? Well, there's more here. So there's 2 more here, or 1 more here. And 1 more here. So you see that that's sort of like the hub for this conversation. Okay, so now we can run this and see what happens. And hello, Ozan. Just recording a YouTube video for the next workshop tutorial. And now if we go to a Tavern Keeper, he should have an option for our new dialogues. So we should be able to talk to him. And we have this new dialogue option: do you sell artisan beer? Greedy bastard at the brewery doesn't want to sell his stuff to me. And then for some reason it exists from the dialogue, but I was expecting it to come back to this screen. Why? Because I have typoed here. Tavern Keeper talk. So you have to actually make sure your strings are correct. but not a big deal. We can just quickly test it again. Okay, and this time if I click here, you can see it comes back to this view. But this is not actually... this line has a small lore problem in that, for example, this city, Maronath, doesn't have a brewery. So I want to add a bit more flavor into this dialogue by adding a condition here that it will check that this town has a brewery, and then we get a different dialogue if it doesn't have one. So for now I want to add a condition for this line of dialogue. So we just make a lambda here. So lambda method, we can write this in line. And this needs to return a boolean, which will be the true if this dialogue should work and false if this dialogue should be skipped. So we can just iterate through the workshops of this current settlement and see if we have a brewer here. So let's just write a loop. Let's go settlement, current settlement, which gives us the town where the player is right now. Very convenient. We need to go town because not all settlements are towns. And then we need to go workshops. And if workshop type if we find a brewery, we can return true. And otherwise, if none of the workshops were breweries, then we return false, meaning that this line of dialogue is not active. And then we can add another one with the same input and output tokens, but different ID. So this will be Tavern Keeper Talk Artisan Beer B. And this will be here, the text will be something like we don't have a brewery in town, you have to look somewhere else. And this time we don't need a condition because this will be our fallback option. So this will be the thing that will be used if we don't have a brewery. So the first one needs the condition, but the last one can be fallback without a condition. So now, for example, in Maronath, which is a town without a brewery, we should get the second dialog option. And we do, and then let's finally check in a town with a brewery that we do indeed match the condition here. For the first dialog option. And we do, so that seems to be working. Okay, so now I think we can go ahead and add dialogues for the NPC that we spawned. So let's go pay him a quick visit and see how it looks. We spawned Caravan Master. Here, right? Yes, here you are. So we want to add some sort of dialogue that will trigger when we start talking to this guy. So to do that, we will need to figure out the starting condition for this dialogue. And every time you start talking with someone, the first input state is called start. And then you're supposed to write some sort of condition, like for example here, the sort of entry condition into this dialog with the tavern keeper is to check that the one-to-one conversation character occupation equals tavern keeper. So we need to do something pretty much exactly like this, but for the NPC that we spawned. So we need input token to be start, and then we need condition that checks, that matches preferably only for the NPC that we spawned. So let's go ahead and do exactly that. And I will wrap this first one in brackets because this is the tavern keeper portion, and this will be the our NPC portion. And these brackets don't do anything. It's just a code organization thing. Well, one thing that they do is that they hide local variables that are defined here, but it's just organizational thing. But I quite like this pattern. So, and this will be add dialog line, and this will be Artisan brewer. Let's call it Artisan brewer talk. I don't know if the ID is final, but it doesn't matter. And the input token is start. Output token can be Artisan brewer, and then text will be howdy, would you like to purchase some Artisan beer? And here we need the condition, and our condition will be, well, I don't know if I need something very similar to the tavern keeper one. So we need character object, one-to-one conversation character, and this will be I guess we will use, so we want, for spawning, we got the character object from the culture, from the settlement culture. So let's just copy this actually and compare against this thing. So if one-to-one conversation character equals settlement, current settlement, culture, Karen master, this will be our final condition. If this is character object, this is character object, and this is character object. This is perfect. And we don't have consequence delegate because we just want to move to the next phase of the dialogue, of the conversation. So now we check that this condition is true from the input state of start. And if it is true, we end up in the conversation state of Artisan brewer. That seems like it's good enough for now. And then we want to add the player dialogues. So this will be, sure, I'll take one. And oh, I need output state. So let's take this to, I guess we can just end the conversation here. We need a consequence. Eventually we will want to have a consequence which is that we buy it. So let's just leave this empty for now. And we also want clickable condition delegate. The clickable condition delegate is if this option should be grayed out or actually clickable. And we want to check the player has enough money to actually buy the item. So we will actually need a clickable condition. So let's also put a placeholder here. I'm not sure I remember how to write a clickable condition because it is a bit more involved. You need text object explanation out. So this will be the argument. And then we need to, well, here we need to check if the player has enough. So here, if main hero gold is less than 2, you return false. This is actually almost exactly what I want. So if main hero gold is less than 2, you return false and set the explanation to something. And otherwise you return true. Let's say it costs 100. Or let's say it costs 200. Then the explanation will be not enough money. And return false, and else explanation will be empty. We need to set it anyway because it is an out parameter and it has to be set. So this should be new text object. Is there some sort of text object empty? Yes. And return true. Okay, so that will be our condition if this is actually clickable at all. And then we need a consequence delegate. But let's see if it's empty for now. The consequence delegate will be where we actually purchase the item, where we will decrease our gold amount and increase the count of this item in our inventory. So we also need second dialog option from the same input state, which is no, I don't want to buy one. Oh, and actually this should lead to like, I want to add one more state after the purchase, which will be like, thank you, come again, or something like that. And this will be where we don't buy one. So let's first set this one. Now I'm good, thanks. And this leads to state where we declined to buy. And let's add some flavor text. The organization for this will be kind of tricky. The organization for this will be kind of tricky because the dialog is actually a tree, but the code is linear. So you just have to make sure that the order where you write this makes sense for you. So this will be the line that happens when his response when you refuse to buy. So this will be your loss line or something like that. And this is finally where we can exit the conversation. And we don't need to do anything because this is the case where we don't do anything. So there's no condition and no consequence. But here we actually decided to buy one. So we should add a thank you line. Let's call this thanks for business. So here you see that our output token was this. So we have to put that one as our input here. And this will be, thank you, come again. Exclamation mark or dot. Let's do an exclamation mark. So then, now let's see if this makes sense. We start the conversation. He starts talking to us, asks if we want to buy. We go to Artisan Brewer. And in Artisan Brewer, we have two layer lines that we can say. We can either say, sure, I'll take one, with the condition that we need to have enough money. Or we can say, nah, I'm good, thanks. And this leads to Artisan, the line where we actually take one leads to Artisan Brewer purchase. And he will say, thank you, come again. And if we go to Artisan Brewer declined, he will say, your loss. So this seems to be correct to me. And then only thing we need to do if this seems working is to actually decrease the player gold and increase the item count. Would you have a relationship condition as well? They will not have changeable relationship. I will just make him happy guy who is always happy to see us. But you could add relation condition, so you can add it as a entry condition. Go to a completely different dialog tree, or you can add it as clickable condition if you just want the option to be grayed out if you don't have enough relation. So now let's just go in game and see if our dialog tree is actually working at all. And again, in this, nowhere in this did we actually specify what NPC we are talking with, but we can put a breakpoint here in our entry condition just to sanity check that this condition, our code is actually running when we our code is actually running when we start talking with this guy. So let's go to Fukaon Brewery just to have some variety and not be all the time in Batania. And I like this brewery layout more anyway. So here we go to Imperial Caravan Master, and our entry condition is triggered here. And you can see that the one-to-one conversation character is Imperial Caravan Master, and of course the settlement culture Caravan Master is the same thing. So we should enter this conversation now. Howdy, would you like to purchase some artisan beer? If we go sure, I'll take one. Oh, this looks wrong. So this looks wrong. So let's see what happened there. We go to this thing. Oh, I English is not my first language. My excuse. So I keep typoing I keep typoing these ideas, but it's fine. So I had purchased it with an S, and in the other place I had with C. So that is why that failed. And let's quickly see declined. Okay, let's hope that they are actually working now. You have to be careful with these string IDs. Not fun. Okay, let's go again to the brewery. Okay, not here. There you are. Thank you, come again. And then we exit the conversation. Now I'm good, you're lost, and we exit the conversation. Okay, so this seems pretty good. Our dialog tree is actually working. And then we just, let's try the non-clickable condition, and let's actually implement this thing. So there's some sort of change hero gold. Sure. I don't know why this exists and it's not a setter on the property. But let's change hero code with minus 200. There's also an action for changing hero gold, but to be honest, I don't care about that stuff. If you know what the actions are, then maybe you care, but right now I don't. And the item will be, let's actually, well, we have the items somewhere, right? I might want to, we don't have the item anywhere. Okay, let's make global, or like, let's put the item object somewhere in the behavior so that we don't have to go through the object manager every time we want, because we will need this in multiple places, I think. So let's just do something like this, and we can do this on session launch. That's fine. So we have to go mountain blade object manager instance get object, and we want item object called Artisan beer, which is the ID we specify in our item XML. And then we have to, on top of removing some gold from the main hero, we have to go to mobile party. Main party, and item roster is the inventory of the main party. And there's something like add to counts, which takes item object and a number. So this will be Artisan beer and 1. Okay, so now let's try to use up all our money to try out this condition, and let's try this one as well. And if all of this looks difficult to you, I promise that it will get easy with practice, or at least easier. Because like managing the dialog tree, it's just about like making sure that all the states you can be in the conversation make sense, and then just chaining them together. So I have 1,000 right now. Let's buy something to... Well, actually, let's first... Well, we can just buy 5 of the beer. So how many do we have right now? We have 10. Are you shop worker? Yes. Here he is. Okay, and now it's grayed out. Not enough money. We could change this text to say that you need 200. Or we could change this to say the price. We went to 0 dinars and we should have 15 of the item. So this is all working. Let me put one mug is 200 dinars. Okay, so I think the dialogue is working right now, and now our artisan brewer NPC actually does something for us. So that is all exactly what I wanted. And now we have dialogues. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode. And the next thing will be custom character object. Any questions about dialogues or what we did right now? Now. So in the next episode, we will change character object. And then we will also need to change the conditions, because right now the condition was we are talking to Caravan Master. But after we change the NPC type, we will no longer be talking to a Caravan Master. So do a little documentation in your Discord about stuff like this. I mean, I think the videos are the documentation, kind of. It's sort of... So textual documentation has like indexing issue, or like how do you structure it so that people will actually find it? If you get what I mean. Like, most of the time, the problem with documentation is that people don't know it exists. And I don't think Discord solves the sort of discoverability problem for documentation. And I think YouTube does better job, maybe, kind of. I mean, it's not a solved issue anyway, but this is definitely getting into the territory where there is no documentation anywhere at the moment for doing stuff like this. Like, this is probably the first place where this is documented at all. I mean, I could do more documentation, but there's also the thing that doing stuff on Discord doesn't necessarily help to grow the YouTube channel, and that's also one goal. Although I am sympathetic to people who prefer text documentation. But I mean, maybe someone else will do it. Maybe someone else will do documentation, for example, based on this series or based on something else. But for example, for the UI stuff, it would be a lot of work for me to do decent documentation. I mean, there is already, maybe I should have shown them at some point. So there is Bannerlord unofficial modding documentation. Thinking just the code and not the YouTube video under it or something. I mean, yeah, maybe. Maybe. So this is the closest thing there is to actual documentation for Bannerlord modding, and it's not great. So for example, if you go to Gauntlet, there's just one sentence saying stuff. Then if you go to these individual pages, they are all saying work in progress, except this one, which doesn't really tell you anything. And then there is this one that actually tries to do something, tries to explain something. But you can see that it's not very complete, and it would be insane amount of work to actually make this complete. You have someone trying to write like API documentation style stuff for this, but oof. What is, like, this is not documentation. This is just a list of functions that you can see way easier in the NSPy anyway. And this looks like documentation, and this would be insane amount of work. Oh, game menu has actually, that's interesting. I will do a video on game menu. Where is it? Here, 14. 14 will be on game menu, and there is actually something here. That's surprising. And this does not look like documentation. This looks like another API dump. Like, what was something? So, like, for example, this campaign behavior base. Writing articles like this, it's so much work. Like, at least for me, it's easier to just do a video that would explain campaign behavior base. I mean, I already did it, kind of. Than trying to write actual coherent sentences. for documentation like this. but it's also kind of matter of personal taste. I mean, I could add channel to the Discord, which is like which is sort of like documentation. I think I kind of understood what your suggestion was, and it's not necessarily bad idea, and I might do it. So something like channel that is like API or something, or like documentation, maybe documentation, and then just add like one line from here, for example, or like 2 lines like this, and then add the video. That might be good. Discord, but as I said, Discord doesn't have great discoverability for old messages. So that is a slight issue that I don't think many people will see the old messages. But it's something at least. So it would be better to have it as something more like this, or the format is something more like this, where you have actual UI to go through all the topics. But I don't think I want to go modify this, although I could. I could try to put my stuff here, but I would have to talk to Aragas, I guess. At least. Maybe someone else. I mean, maybe it's worth trying to get my videos here. Like, for example, add dialogue here and try to get the previous episode here. But I might as well complete the series before I think about modifying this unofficial modding documentation. But that's not a bad idea at all. Anyway, let's make a commit for the previous. And there we have a git commit for the previous episode. And the next one is custom character object. Do I remember how that works? Does it matter? Should I remember how it works? I guess I will try to record the next episode as well here. And let's see if it is complete catastrophe or if I can think on the spot and actually complete what we need to do. So hello everyone, and welcome to the episode 9 of the Artisan Workshop modding series. And in this episode, I will try to add some flavor to the NPC that we spawn in the breweries, the Artisan Brewer. So I will try to give him his own an NPC type, a new character object that will make him be like special NPC. And then I will try to add him drinking animation that we will copy from the NPCs drinking in the taverns. And we will see how you can slightly modify the NPC that we have spawned into the world. But first, let's try to figure out how we can add our own character objects. So let's assume that I have no idea what I'm doing, which is kind of close to reality. So, but we know that the objects are defined in the XMLs. So I can again use the reprep tool to try to find where the character objects are defined. Right now I'm using Caravan Master. So let's just try to find where the Caravan Masters are defined. And Conspiracy Caravan Master seems to be something related to the story mode. Make this a bit bigger. And this will give us, hopefully this will give us where the character objects are defined. Okay, so here are all the character objects, and it looks like what I need is in sandbox core, module data, single player NPC characters, XML. So let's just go ahead and actually just copy that into our own project. So let's go sandbox core, module data, single player NPC characters. Okay, let's copy this. And our mod is called Artisan beer. And if you remember, we also need to modify the submodule XML. So let's go sandbox core, open this. Let's look for single player NPC character. And let's copy this XML node into our own submodule.xml to make sure that the game will actually load our NPC definition XML. Let's come here and add another XML node. Oh, this is the templates though. Okay, but this is the same. I just removed the templates. Oh, and we can even rename the file. So let's call this Artisan Brewer character. Now we need to go and rename the file as well. Without the S. So now the game should load our XML here. If we come here, and look for something like Caravan Master Empire. So let's say that this is the thing that I want to copy for my Artisan Brewer. So let's say I want my Artisan Brewer to be based on Caravan Master Empire. So let's delete everything else. And then we don't need skills. We don't need, well, let's leave it empty, I guess. I don't need upgrade targets. This is fine. We need to change the ID. So let's call this Artisan Brewer. We need to change the name. Occupation, there is actually, so, oh, I don't need to change the occupation. I think this is fine. He's kind of decadent guy, so culture empire is fine. Although you could make a separate one for each culture, of course. We don't need, so equipment rosters, you see, this one has civilian equals true, and the other ones therefore are not civilian rosters. So we don't need the combat equipment for this guy. And here you can change his items. And I don't like the shoulder pads, this studded Imperial neck guard. So I want to kind of change this item. But I don't honestly remember all the item IDs. So let's try to look for something that would look reasonable. Let's go to sandbox core items, and which one is the cape? Shoulder armors. Let's just look for some sort of cloak. Doesn't look too bad. Let's try simple cape. Try A Betinia cloak A. I just don't want him to look so militaristic. That's all. So let's change his shoulder piece to this Patania generic cloak. And this should be pretty much everything we need to specify for our character object. So now we have specified new NPC character with this ID. And since we have specified that this will be loaded in our submodule.xml, we can just ask the MB object manager for the character object type that we have specified. So if we go to Artisan beer behavior, you remember where we spawned the caravan master? We actually didn't go through the object manager here because we got the caravan master from the culture, from the settlement culture. So this is just a character object. And again, if something is something object, it is probably loaded from the XMLs, and we can use the object manager to get one of those. So let's get our character object. Same way we get our Artisan beer. And whoa, that's a crazy situation. And it was exactly what I wanted to write. So ask object manager for our character object with the ID Artisan brewer. And now instead of checking for caravan master here, we can check for our Artisan brewer. And instead of spawning a caravan master here, we can just spawn Artisan brewer. And that should be enough. So we can launch this now and see if we got our modified NPC. So let's try to find our dude, and here they are. And you see that we have actually managed to spawn Artisan brewer, and our dialogue is still functional. And we can buy from him. And he doesn't have the militaristic shoulder pauldrons anymore. Instead, he has this simple cloak. And we could give him other clothing items as well. I think I want to replace this chainmail as well. So let's try to look for someone with a nice coat. Oh, this guy has a very nice cloak. Very nice jacket. Let's try to look for Imperial Trader and get his this chest armor. To do that, I think the Imperial Trader will be specified in the same NPC file that we copied initially. So let's just search for Trader. Maybe Trader _ Empire. Arm Trader is not right. Here you have Merchant _ Empire. Goods Trader. This is, I think, what I want. So he has a couple different equipment rosters. But I think the thing that I want is this Merchant's Fur coat. So let's copy this. And replace Legionary Mail with Merchant's Fur coat. Do I want any of this other stuff? I think this will be fine. So now he should look a bit more like a merchant and less like a military personnel. So, and after we check this guy out with his new coat, I want to try to find the drinking animation. I want to try to demonstrate the drinking animation that I also want to utilize here. And now we were successfully able to give him this a bit nicer looking coat. And I guess the cloak is not perfect, but it is good enough for me. And he looks like a guy who could be running an artisan brewery now. Okay, so next thing, I want to give him a drinking animation. So if we go to a tavern, are we able to find guys who are drinking? Here you have some. So you can see that there are some townsmen with these jugs. And I think I want to try to give the same animation to our artisan brewer. And then I want to replace this generic jug with the item that we created. I think that will be the goal. So we made this nice model for our artisan beer. So I think it would be nice if the artisan brewer drank from our item instead of this generic mug. So let's first try to find where these guys are spawned, guys with the drinking animation. So let's hop into DN Spy and see if we can find this. Let's see, I already know where they are, but I wonder how we should demonstrate how to find this. Okay, I know now. So let's look for location character so that we can find all the places where location characters are created. So here we have one place where location characters are created, and we can be pretty sure that these guys are also location characters. So they should be spawned in roughly the same way by creating a new location character. So if we just look at all the places where new location characters are created, we get this nice list of all the different types of NPCs. And here you have create townsman, tavern, drinker, which seems to be exactly what we want. And here you can see they have something that looks very much like what we used to spawn our Artisan brewer. And the only thing is that they have these action set codes, and then they have these things that seems to be the item that they're holding. So this has kitchen mug, a drinking animation. This guy is holding Kuside pot for drink, and seems like based on the culture, they are holding different items and have different animations. So let's just try to use this stuff for our dude. So let's start by copying this, which is the non-Aserai, non-Kusite drinking animation, and the object that they are holding, which seems to be the generic mug. And let's try to use this stuff here. So they have this action set code, which is after the relation. So it's exactly here. And actually I want to make him friendly. I think the only thing that will change are the facial expressions, but I think the Artisan brewer should be a happy dude. So let's make him friendly, and let's give him this action set code. And then we need to give him these prefab names for bones. And so what this basically means is that the bones are, how to explain bones? So every animation has like things that are called like bones, which are parts of the characters, right? So this is basically like a map from bones of the characters to the items here. So we can specify that for this bone, which is main hand item bone index, to this bone we assign this prefab. So these are prefabs, and prefabs are something that you specify in the editor. I don't know, this explanation is very poor. I should try to figure out a better way to explain this. It's kind of, this is the part where you get into things that are not that clear to me, so it's difficult to come up with a good explanation. So let's just say that in this part we specify which prefab the NPC should be holding and where that item should be, where that prefab is located in relation to the character. So here we specify that the location of the prefab will be main hand item bone index, which is something that is like it depends on the animation and depends on the monster, the skeleton, where this item should be located in relation to the character. But we know that this is the animation these guys use, and we can see that they seem to be holding the item in the right place. And we know that we choose the same monster. So here we chose the monster human monster settlement. So we should have the same skeleton. So we should be able to use the same bone indices. So this should put the item in the right place for our NPC. But for example, if you were looking at horses, then these bone indices would be different, of course, because the horses will have different skeletons. But let's just put this stuff here, and the formatting is awful. Why? Why cannot I format this? Oh, I put it in the wrong place. Is that why? So let's just put this map of prefab names for bones here. And why is the formatting still bad? Oh, we need to get this agent data separately. So agent data is the first argument for the location character. Okay, so this looks like this should work, but I don't understand why the formatting is so bad. I mean, what is going on here? Fine, I'll fix the format myself. So this should already give us the drinking animation. So let's just try this now. Only thing we really changed was the action set code. As human villager drinker with mug, and we put this item, which is the kitchen mug, where his hand is located. And you see he has the mug, but he's not in the right animation. But I think, not quite sure how it actually works. But this happened to me sometimes, that he's somehow in like sort of weird animation. But if we go out and come back in, I mean, even the guys in the tavern, sometimes they go to different animation pattern. So you see now he looks like he's holding it properly, even though I didn't change anything. So I think it is actually working. Now he should take a sip soonish. So you see it is actually running the correct animations, but it's just sort of weird sometimes. He can move into different states where the mug is not, or he's not holding the mug perfectly, but it is actually working. So now let's try to change this item. So to change this item, we will have to modify the prefab. Because he's not actually holding an item, he's holding a prefab. So let's try to find this one, kitchen mug, a drinking animation. And to find this, we can use the same trick that we will use over and over again. So we can search for it with ripgrep. So let's look for kitchen mug, a drink anim. It's kind of hard because I want to keep the font large enough so that people can see through the video compression, but it's also kind of too much. So let's go through where this kitchen mug a drinking animation is used, and maybe we can find where it is defined. So you can see that this prefab is used in a bunch of scenes, so actual maps. And once we find the prefab definition, it might become easier to understand what prefabs actually are. Here. Oh, it was almost at the bottom. So this seems to be the place where this is defined. It's in native prefabs, props, agent, carry items.xml. Let's go look at what is native prefabs, props, agent, carry items. Let me open another one. So we can take this into Artisan beer and go into native with this. So native prefabs. First of all, we don't have prefabs here, so we should make one. And then agent carry items, right? Props agent carry items. Oh, it's this one. So we want to copy this into our prefabs. So let's look at what we actually copied. I should actually, I think it would be easier to explain with some other prefabs. Let's look at furniture. Okay, so let's look at props furniture to see what props are all about. So here we have actually a bit more complicated prefab. So prefabs are collections of meshes together with their position, rotation, scale, and so on and so forth. So these are objects that are grouped together. So this is group of objects. So Asarai Tavern's table C is a collection of tables and roasted chicken and melon and all this stuff. Bottles on the table, kitchen bowl. So prefabs are collections of things that you can use more conveniently in the editor. So in this case, if you want to place Asarai Tavern table, you don't if you want to have multiple of these tables, you don't want to have to specify all these items every time. You just want some roasted chicken and some melons on the table. So you can use this prefab to plop multiple of these combinations of objects at a go. So prefabs are like groups of objects, groups of meshes together with their rotations and positions and stuff like that. So if we look at what we copied over, the props agent carry items, and if we modify this so that it has only the thing that we actually wanted, kitchen mug a drinking animation. So let's do the same thing again. Let's remove everything we don't need here. And let's rename this to Artisan beer drinking animation. So you see here we have some sort of transform, some sort of rotation, and some sort of scale. And we have meta mesh here. So this will be whatever we called our mesh. It's Artisan beer mesh. And if you remember, long ago, when we were actually creating our mesh, in Blender, let's see, is it this one? Maybe it's this one. I said that it would be easier later on if we put this object, if we put the origin where we want the hand to go. So we put the origin here, and this is where the sort of 0 point for the animation will be here in the origin. So you see here they set some sort of transform. So we don't actually need this. So we can set the transform to be 0, 0. Because we know that our object is done so that the hand will already be in the correct position. And for now, let's also set the rotation to be 0. Although I'm not sure our object is actually rotated in the correct direction. We will see. Scale, we will see later if we have to modify the scale. But for now, this is our Artisan beer drinking animation. Or the prefab, not the actual animation. The actual animation comes from this action set code. This will be our prefab that we put here where his hand is. Okay. And you notice that we didn't actually specify that this file should be loaded anywhere. We didn't add it to our submodule.xml or anything. The prefabs are loaded always. At least I hope. So now you see he is holding something like our item. Looks to be a bit large, although it looks sort of comical. And you also see it is indeed not rotated correctly. See, he's holding it in sort of side carry. So we want to rotate it, I think, 90 degrees along Z-axis. And it's a bit large. So let's make it like maybe 0.6. So it's now 0.9. Let's make it 0.6. And this is the Z-axis. Let's try 90 or 90 degrees of Z rotation. The axes are always kind of it can depend on the game, on the editor, on everything, but for both Blender and Bannerlord, Z-axis is up to the sky. So if we rotate something along the Z-axis, let's see. If we rotate something along the Z-axis, it will rotate like this. Where are you? And I don't think it is right still. You also see here his animation is kind of, he's in the wrong animation again. But what should I try now? 180? No, let's try minus 90. Maybe it was actually 180. Anyway, we can try this through and see which one works. -90 seems to have done the trick. And the scale also looks reasonable. And the position looks pretty accurate actually. Well, his hand is kind of coming through here. But at least it looks like he's holding the handle at a good spot. I'm pretty happy with this actually. Let's see him actually drink from it. Do something. Suspension is killing me. I mean, he's holding it like a mug, so he has to be in the correct animation, I think. Now he's going to drink. This thing always precedes actually drinking. Oh yes. Well, he's holding it a bit above his mouth, but I think this will be good enough for now. You could maybe... Oh, now he's going. You could maybe modify, try to make it match the hand a bit better to maybe fix him holding it too high. But that looks good enough for me. I know we are not committed to quality, but it's a tutorial series. So I don't think people will want to spend too much time adjusting the position of the beer mug anyway. So now we have added a lot more flavor for our NPC. We have our own clothes, we have the name, of course, and we have the drinking animation. And he is starting to look a lot more like an artisan brewer. So I'm happy with this. And I think this concludes our episodes. I think this concludes our episode on making him a unique NPC. And I want to thank you so much for watching. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Alright. I will have to edit the explanation of prefab some bones a bit, but other than that it wasn't too rough. I kind of remembered what to do, or like I kind of found out everything I needed without making too many detours. And he is happily drinking from our excellent beer mug model. This is kind of, so the thing that is kind of not ideal about this is that the thing that actually, like, I would kind of want to market this as like, oh, we go into the agent behaviors and stuff because we add this drinking animation, but the actual behaviors come from these things. Let's see, add wanderer behaviors. Add wanderer behaviors. It's a method. No. Oh, here. The actual behaviors come from these things. The agent behaviors and the behavior groups and all this stuff. You have outdoor wanderer behaviors, indoor wanderer behaviors, ambush player behaviors, stand guard, patrolling guard. So if you wanted to make the artisan brewer behave like a patrolling guard, you would just replace the wanderer behaviors with patrolling guard behaviors, whatever that means. But these things are very complicated. So these are sets of behaviors. So you have behavior sets, and then you have, for example, here you add for the patrolling guard, you to the alarmed behavior group, you add a behavior called fight behavior. It sets his agent aggressiveness. These are very complicated. I don't. These are not needed for my mod or my concept of artisan brewery, and they are very messy, and I don't understand them too well yet. You can make so like, for example, what does it mean when indoor wanderer has flee behavior and fight behavior? Set outdoor wandering false. Oh, he has walking behavior, right? So in his daily behavior group, he has a walking behavior. But this all came from basically here. For our location character, we add behaviors here, and we add wanderer behaviors, and that is actually, we could check the guy drinking in the tavern. Let's see, common townsfolk. The guy drinking in tavern also has wanderer behaviors. So maybe we could change that to like fixed character behavior, and that might fix the animations sometimes getting kind of wonky. Maybe it's the wanderer behaviors and the walking around that actually causes the animations to fail sometimes. Or we could try indoor wanderer behaviors, but I don't know what that is, because even the guy drinking in tavern doesn't have indoor wanderer behavior, although he is technically indoors. We could try fixed character behavior, but I don't think, and that would stop him from moving around, I think. But if you want to try to make your own behaviors, I wish you the best of luck. Your own agent behaviors. First companion behavior. So this is the guy who is following you. But there's nothing about following here, so I'm not quite sure. Well, here's add bodyguard behavior. So these are guys who are following the main agent. Stuff like that. I'm not explaining agent behaviors, is not in the scope of this thing. So I'm not going to even try more than this, just showing them here on the stream. So that will be the episode 9 done. And the next thing will be the mission UI. And that will be our first dive into Gauntlet UI. So I will also have to explain view models. And that sounds kind of scary. So I will have to think about how to explain view models like in a way that makes sense, because it doesn't really make sense anyway. these UI episodes. Bye, Francis. See you. Maybe I probably want to edit these episodes anyway, so then 8 and 9. So I think I will end the stream here now then, and then we will see if I do these today or later. But at least I got 2 episodes recorded. So I will get to editing them and I will see you later.